beginning and an end of every segment on this program, you can hear some of the catchiest, funkiest, or depending on the cut, soothingest riffs in all of riffdom. But who is the face behind the bass? Grateful Dead bassist Phil Lesh joins us soon in the Air America studios. And although you can't see his face or steal his face right off his head, I will be able to describe it to you when he gets here. Or better yet, you can try to imagine it when you'll hear his dulcet rumble of his alto, the rockinest bassist in the rockinest band and the rockinest musical genre, rock. We'll be here to rock you in just a moment. He's in the elevator, I think, with a frank discussion of his rockin' new book. Hour 3 of the Al Franken Show starts now. Welcome back to our second hour. I'm Al Franken. With me, of course,
I'm Catherine Lanford.
And Phil, we just heard from Phil's publicist, because he's on a book tour now, because he's got a new book. Phil Lesh, of course, one of the founding members of the Grateful Dead, and as everyone knows, we play Dead. We play Dead, and when everyone asked me why when we started this, and they still ask me why. I love the Dead.
When did that start for you, by the way?
It started in college, and then Tom Davis really introduced me to the Dead.
Because, you don't strike me as sort of a typical Deadhead. But then again,
I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. You go to a Dead concert, there's
just
a lot of
50,000 Al
guys.
Frankens.
Well, no, there's...
whirling around.
It's funny, last time I went, Eric Alterman was there.
Really? Okay, that's
Is Phil
beginning to
coming in?
track for me. It looks like
All right, sit down, Phil.
Phil Lesh is coming here
Hey,
to
man.
the Air America studios.
Have
He's
a
a
seat.
bass player and a founding member of the Grateful Dead, and his new autobiography is Searching for the Sound, My Life with the Grateful Dead.
Yep.
Welcome to the Al Franken Show.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Meet Catherine. Catherine
Hi,
Lanford.
Kathy.
How do you do?
Nice to meet you.
Okay. I was just saying that when I picked the Dead, because I do all Dead bumpers on the show.
All dead all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
And people objected, of course.
well, of course. Let them object.
And a lot of people said, well, you don't want that association to the '60s, and
Why not?
That's what I said.
Okay.
And because they said and drugs, and boy, there are drugs in this book. You're very frank in the book. The book is Searching for the Sound, and I just love the book. I got to tell you,
Any laughs at all, Al?
Yes, in fact, I'm going to have you read. I've picked a couple things for you to read.
I'd love to do that.
Okay, and the drugs certainly, as you say, were a tool, but they also extracted a terrible toll.
Yeah, but we're talking about different drugs here as well.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, there's the self-medication withdrawal from life drugs, and then there's the life-enhancing entheogenic drugs. Entheogenic, manifesting the divine within.
Okay, and that would be LSD?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
That's one example.
I'll tell you why, because I want you to read this passage, and I'm not recommending LSD to our listeners.
You're sure about that, Al?
You're welcome to, but I don't.
No, I'm not recommending it either.
Okay. But this is I felt kind of hilarious. It's when you guys were dosed.
Yeah, us dosed. What a concept.
At a concert, meaning someone put some LSD in some apple juice. And
Well,
this is just
put
your
too much LSD.
Yeah, way too much. And this is your description of Mickey basically trying to get you on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
So read the part I highlighted, please.
After eons of time seemed to have passed, I became aware that I was, on some level, still in a room full of people. One of them, whom I recognized as Mickey, was holding an obscure elongated device with knobs on both ends and iridescent silver scaly strands holding it together. Phil, he said, this is your bass. You play this instrument in our band. Oh, yes, I remember now. How does it work? Well, you just put the strap over your head like this. And Mickey took me by the hand and led me to some stairs and then up onto the stage. To this day, I don't really know whether or not Nick was as high as I was. But his tenderness and compassion toward me that night have never left me, and I've never loved him more than at that moment.
And Mickey is a tender and compassionate guy.
Yeah, he is to the core.
And that bass, because I want to... Searching for the Sound is about music. I mean, searching for the sound. And in the book, there's so much... The highest highs are about music.
Yeah, they definitely are. They definitely are.
And, I learned, I didn't know that the bass was not your first instrument. I didn't know that you didn't play the bass until you started playing with Jerry and Bobby and Billy.
Yeah.
In the Warlocks.
That's right.
And Jerry just said, "You're our bass player."
No, he said, well, what he actually said was, "Hey, man, I want you to play bass in my band."
Okay. Yes.
And
you were classically trained.
Yeah, and jazz trumpeter too.
Yeah, and jazz trumpeter, and you pick up this instrument. Now, can you describe? Because so much of this, what I love about the book is your technical description of music. I don't know a thing about music, but you do it in such a Grateful Dead way of vividly and intellectually describing music in a way that I was able to understand, partly because I know your music. But tell me about your approach to the bass. It was an advantage in a way not to have played bass, right?
Exactly right. And it's funny because I asked Jerry to give me a lesson because he was a famous guitar teacher. And I said, okay, I'll play bass in your band, but you got to give me a lesson. Just one. That's all I asked. And so he said, okay, come on over to the house after the gig. And so I went over there, and he said, okay, here's your lesson, man. See these 4 strings, the bottom 4 strings on a guitar? They're tuned the same as the ones on the bass. I know that, Jerry. Okay, well, here's what you do. You borrow a guitar and a pick or some kind of plectrum from somebody, and you practice some scales on the bottom 4 strings of the guitar. And then we'll set you up with a place to live down here. You come down here and we'll find an instrument and we'll start playing.
That was the lesson?
That was it? This is it, Jerry? Hey, you don't need any more. And I to this day I believe that he didn't want to influence the way that I thought about it, that I looked at it. He knew I was a musician. I think he wanted me to come at it in as pure a way as possible.
You did end up thinking about it differently than most bass players.
I did, yes, because I came from not just an instrumental background. I was trained in composition. I studied composition. I studied the great masters: Bach, Beethoven, Palestrina, Mahler, Wagner, Schoenberg, and I'd studied avant-garde kind of composition on a graduate level. So I started looking at them. I looked at the music as a composer would, really. And I wanted to make the bass meaningful rather than just stating the root note of the chord and playing with the kick drum on the downbeat. So I wanted to approach it in a way that the melodic aspect of it, such as you'll find in polyphonic music from Baroque or Renaissance periods, the bass makes melodic statements, only they're a little slower than the rest of the voices. The bass tends to define the rate of harmonic motion, that is to say, how fast the chords change. Mm-hmm. And that really has a lot to do with the emotional trajectory of the music, is how fast. So if you have a movement or a piece of music that's moving rapidly and the chords are changing really fast, there's a certain kind of emotional tension and release intensity that happens there. If the harmonic motion is slower, it doesn't even have to be in a slower tempo, but if the rate of chord change is slower, then it tends to be more tranquil, and the moments of tension and release are farther apart.
And that all was part of the experience. A lot of people don't get what going to a Grateful Dead concert was, and for me, and I went to 50 or so, which I guess of Deadheads is low.
Well, that's a good average.
It's like a median or something.
Yeah.
I went to Dead concerts for a lot of reasons. One of which it was that it was an incredibly safe place to have an adventure.
Exactly. I point that out in the book. Yeah. It's one of the last great American adventures.
And also, through the hours that you played. I did a lot of
Centuries.
a lot of emoting and thinking and it just okay. Let's go to
Just plain living too.
And living.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Jerry's musicianship, because he could pick up something like the pedal steel, and it would be just and then he'd stop playing it because he
wasn't satisfied. He wasn't satisfied with the way he was developing. Pedal steel is a good example because it's an incredibly complicated instrument to master. You have to use your knees, your feet, and two hands. So you're dancing sitting down, much like a trap drummer does. So, okay, let's say you're playing on a string and you have a bar. It's like a slide for a slide guitar, and you're picking the strings with your right hand and you're moving this bar around. At the same time, you're controlling the pitch of the strings. You play a string instrument by shortening or lengthening the string. On a violin, you do it with your fingers on a fretboard, like a guitar. With the pedal steel, you press a pedal and the string stretches or contracts to a precise length, so that you can hold the bar straight, just in one place on the fretboard, pick a chord and do things with your feet, and the chord will change. And the voicing will change in as many as 10 different ways.
I want to take a break and play a little Pride of Cucamonga going out, where you'll hear Jerry play the pedal steel, and he was just great. And when I come back, I want to ask you about Box of Rain.
Alrighty.
Of course. We're talking to Phil Lesh. His new book is Searching for the Sound, My Life with the Grateful Dead. Let's play us out with some Pride of Cucamonga. Okay, we're back with Phil Lesh.
Listening for the secret. Searching for the sound.
Searching for the Sound. Title of his new book, Searching for the Sound, My Life with the Grateful Dead. Great book. We played out Pride of Cucamonga. I thought I was playing Jerry, and it wasn't.
No, it turned out that Jerry didn't actually want to play pedal steel on that one, so we asked John McPhee from the band Clover to come in and play.
Now, I look stupid, except that he's not listed on the album.
Exactly right. The story is that our record company president at the time gave the musicians on the album, this is Mars Hotel we're talking about, he gave them a choice. They could be listed on the album and get credit, or they could get money.
Okay, and this leads me into what I wanted you to read another excerpt from the book here, which is about your guys' attitude toward business.
Okay.
So start
start
from where I highlighted.
It says, meanwhile, I write, our new manager Lenny hadn't been idle. He was trying to persuade us to star in a really bad movie as Psychedelic Cowboys. Now, the only good thing that came out of that was learning to ride horses courtesy of Mickey. And more distressing, Lenny was extending our record contract with Warner Brothers without our knowledge. We later found out there'd been a re-signing bonus. Although we never saw a dime, it still came out of our royalties. How naive are these guys, you're probably asking, and rightly so. But the truth is, we didn't really care about any of those details, partly out of laziness, and partly because deep down we all feared that delving too deeply into the business end might compromise the music somehow.
That last part.
Yeah.
That it would compromise the music.
Yeah, I mean,
that is very 60s, man.
No, man, that's musicians. I mean, you got to
wear a sign
understand.
That says "Rip me off."
Yeah, whatever. But the thing is, you got to understand, this was sacred to us. The music was sacred. It was holy stuff. And
what
you
do
laugh.
you think?
You laugh, but
Actually, I wasn't laughing.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard a snicker there.
No, that was just an intake of breath.
Oh,
To say, what do you think made it sacred to others then?
Well, the thing is that what we were trying to do was to create a community. We were trying to create a ritual of oneness and an experience, a collaborative experience of higher reality, if you will.
And that's why I went. That's another reason I went.
Exactly.
I was surrounded by people like me.
Yes, and that's the community.
It really
was. The community that sprang up, and those are the people who followed us around. We used to say every place we play is church, and we were deadly serious about that, because it was religious in the original sense of the word, binding together. Religiare is a Latin word which means bind together.
I want to talk about. There's so much fun in this book too, and tragedy and ups and downs. I'll get to Box of Rain next. You can stay another 15 minutes, and I want to get to Box of Rain, which is a song that means tremendous to me and to a lot of other people. But there are stories of chaos, and I want specifically Woodstock. I want to talk about Woodstock and Altamont, if you can, in the next, minute and a half. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, we'll try. Well,
right.
no. Okay, give Woodstock. Just give it all to Woodstock.
But the thing is
the
that
stage was moving. That was a
Yes.
cool thing to me.
It was kind of cool, too, except that along with that went a total power outage, no lights. We couldn't even see we couldn't see anybody in the audience. The power outage was all our amp lines where our instruments were heard by us on stage were completely out, and there was a madman raving through the PA. I quote him in the book. I can't remember exactly what he said. And behind the scene, there's voices screaming, "The stage is collapsing! The stage is collapsing!" The wind is blowing against the screen for the light show and sort of pushing the stage
like a sail.
through the mud. Exactly. And there's a 50-foot pole in the ground, and there's no ground. There's no dry ground at 50 feet.
So now Bobby was knocked on his ass.
Yep. There was a blue flame about a yard long that arced between his lips and the microphone as all he did was approach it. And it was amazing. He bounced back up screaming, "I didn't even touch it! I didn't even touch it!"
So this is like the biggest gig ever.
Yeah, ever.
And it was just
it was total chaos, but we managed to actually play as well.
We'll be back with more of Phil Lesh from the Grateful Dead here on the Al Franken Show on Air America Radio.
Okay, we're back with Phil Lesh here on the Al Franken Show. I'm Al Franken.
I'm Catherine Lanfer, and we're continuing our conversation with Phil Lesh, a bass player, founding member of the Grateful Dead. He has a new book out. It's an autobiography, Searching for the Sound, My Life with the Grateful Dead, and he remains here with us in the Air America studios.
No, that was, Phil, you remember that? It was from the last show at Winterland?
Yeah, I remember. I saw you there too, man. You were out in the second row. Man.
I was there.
Rocking out,
I was there. I remember that show. I really do. And I saw you at Jones Beach, the Dead. Now you're going by the Dead. And I was scared to go to the show.
Uh-huh.
I was scared to go to the show because I thought I had not seen you guys since Jerry died. And I was scared. I didn't do any of the further tours, anything like that. And I got to tell you, you were great. You guys are so tight. And it says, and I was reading the New York Times review of your book, actually. And Jimmy Herring and Warren Haynes kind of fill in. And what's interesting, and I asked you this during the break. I said, because I felt that Herring could play Jerry when he wanted to, and didn't play Jerry and that it was like a perfect mix. And you guys had worked that out, decided that, or basically had, or what?
Sometimes it's spontaneous, and sometimes it's planned. Because when we were rehearsing, excuse me, when we were rehearsing for the tour, and we did a lot of rehearsal for that tour. And Jimmy would say, "Okay, here, do you want me to play Jerry's part, or?" And in my band, sometimes he'd ask, "Do you want me to play Jerry's part or Bob's part?" Mm-hmm. Jimmy was playing in my band. And so he'd say yes, yay or nay, depending on what wanted to happen there. Sometimes there'd be a keyboard solo, and Jerry would play a repeating ostinato underneath it, or something like that. And so we would ask Jimmy to play those things, and the signature licks, sometimes the things that start out songs, are part of the hook or the signature lick for the song. And so we'd always ask Jimmy to play that.
I thought it was incredibly tasteful in the way, and not tasteful like in memory of Jerry, but I mean tasty in the way he did it.
Yeah, no, that's Jimmy.
And I came back just inspired by how tight you guys were.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like, hey, that's right, I'm younger than these guys. I can up my game. And Catherine, you were talking about this becoming like there's a repertoire.
Yeah, and that's the way I've started to approach the music. ever since I started performing again with my own band after Jerry's death, I wanted to treat it as like a Shakespeare play or a Beethoven quartet, and bring in different kinds of musicians who maybe had never played Grateful Dead before, and incorporate their approach to the music into the context of my band. And that turned out to work really well with the Dead tune.
Can you talk a minute about what it was like in the immediate aftermath of Jerry's death? I mean, how did you think about the future?
Well, there were certain things that had to happen right away.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we stopped being a touring band. Now, and since that was 90% of our income, we had to unfortunately lay off quite a few of our employees. We had at the time we had 60 employees at the time of Jerry's death. So a lot of them were laid off, and we also now we had a business that was kind of top heavy with expenses and overhead, and yet we couldn't tour to support it. So we had to we went from being a touring band to selling T-shirts, essentially. T-shirts,
marketing, merchandising, and the vault.
And the nature of the vault is such that we kind of have to dribble it out.
The vault is, of course, the music. And you guys taped everything, and you let tapers tape.
Yes, we did.
Which was a great decision.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, just like we did everything else, we sort of backed into it. We didn't make the decision to as a marketing ploy at all. It was just that it was too much hassle to try and be the cops and police it.
Well, I like Jerry's quote on it.
Yeah.
Once we're done with it, or once we played it, we're done with it.
Yeah, it's yours.
Listen, I know you got to get going, and so I don't want to not do Box of Rain, not talk about Box of Rain in this interview.
Alrighty.
You wrote it around when your dad was dying.
Yes.
And it just means so much to me every time I hear it. I think of my dad.
Is that right?
I do.
Is he still living now?
No, he died about 11 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And it's just a beautiful song. I remember you guys weren't doing it in your repertoire very much. At a certain point, you were at Giant Stadium. I brought my daughter backstage, and she requested it for the encore. And you guys played it, and you forgot some of the lyrics.
That may have been the first time we'd played it in a long time.
But I really appreciate that.
Oh.
But tell us about writing that song.
Well, it's funny how songs develop. Sometimes the lyrics are the first to surface, and for me, more often, it's I have to start with a musical idea. So I was just I'd learned that my dad had cancer and had undergone surgery, and I was visiting him from time to time at his hospital where he'd done surgery, and then at home, and then finally he went into a nursing home because it was clearly terminal, and he had to be cared for constantly. And so all during this time I was fooling around with this musical idea. It had a kind of contour to it, and it had a verse that ended in 3 different ways and 2 or 3 different choruses, and it just all fell together into this form, which was strangely moving. Just the form, just listening to the chords itself had an emotional trajectory to it, an emotional shape. And I started finding a melody for it, and I made a little tape of that and gave it to Hunter, and it's Hunter that really came up with the capper. He laid down those lyrics, and it just I could hardly sing them at first.
Your dad's last words were, "What are we waiting for? Let's get the show on the road."
Man, what a guy. I mean, if I hope I have, I hope I feel that way when it's my turn,
Yeah, I hope that. Now, and you had a dream. I read this book that you dreamt. Was it that night?
Yeah, it was the night after he died. Yeah, that night of the day that he died. I dreamed that I dreamed he came to me in the dream, He came to me in a dream. It was the most unique dream I've ever had. There's this featureless space, and he's sitting in a chair that he looked like he had before he was sick.
I wonder how common that is to to dream of a parent when they're in the prime.
Yeah.
That's what I had the same dream.
Yeah.
Which is seeing my dad in his prime.
Well, so for me, I know that one of the reasons that happened was because we had a lot of things that were left unsaid when he passed. We'd had a kind of how can I say, turbulent relationship, especially after I started going through adolescence, and I always felt that he saw some in me some less desirable aspects of his own character that he didn't really want to see transferred.
Well, there were times when you probably displayed those.
I definitely did.
Maybe during the alcoholic period.
Oh, but this was later.
Oh,
that
true.
was later.
Yeah.
That was later, and it was just towards the end that I started getting the sense that he really was accepting me as a man in my own right.
He introduced you to the nurse.
Yeah.
As my son from Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. The book is terrific. It's I hate to say this because of all the other books, but it's my favorite book far and away about the dead.
Oh, thank you, Al.
And I just want to go out with about a minute of 45 seconds of Box of Rain.